Along with shade cloth and an excessively thick mulch layer, grow lights have been one of our greatest gardening game changers. Not only do grow lights allow us to give our plants a much needed head start to build resilience against the often hostile conditions of the Sacramento Valley summers, they also prevent starts from becoming tall, weak, and spindly, as they often do when positioned in front of a sunny window. While my current grow light setup has been useful in growing healthy starts for almost 3 seasons now, it's admittedly a makeshift and haphazard platform that leaves a lot of room for improvement. My initial grow light rack was simply an inexpensive plastic shelving unit into which I set some hooks from which the grow lights were suspended on chains. While the setup did its job, the entire platform was shaky and unstable. The power cords were often in the way, and at the end of the day, the setup lacked the space I needed to start the number of plants needed to fill our gardens. Not only was the usable area inadequate, but so was the amount of headspace between shelves. Because our summers are so hot and extreme heat can damage young plants and then inhibit fruit set, I prefer to start my tomatoes early enough so that the plants are a foot tall or better by the time the typical transplant date arrives in mid-April. Since there's just over a foot of headspace between the shelf and the lights at their maximum height setting, our tomatoes are often hitting the lights before outdoor conditions are warm enough for transplant. So I decided that since I was in a position to do so this year, I was going to expand and improve my grow light setup. And the first thing that I was going to need was a much bigger, much better shelf. For step one, I took stock of what scrap lumber and spare parts that I had on hand. And what I did was I gathered up this collection here of pieces of 2x3s and 2x2s and used them to build this nice cozy fire that I sat by while online shopping for out-of-the-box shelving options. A man's got to know his limitations, and my limitation when it comes to carpentry and woodworking is a basic wooden box that holds soil for an outdoor planter. It's a whole other animal when you start thinking about building a shelving unit where everything has to be perfectly straight, level, and even. That's just way more aggravation and skill than I'm capable of, to be honest. Also, given the price of lumber, I figured I probably wouldn't be able to build something from scratch for any cheaper than it would be just to buy something ready to go out of the box. I wound up settling on this metal shelving unit from Home Depot for about $160. Each shelf is 4 feet wide, 2 feet deep, and most importantly, the shelves are adjustable to allow my plants room to grow tall. I'm sure assembly will be an intuitive, aggravation-free process. After cursing my way through the setup of the shelving unit, it was time to unpack and assemble my grow lights. I decided to stick with the 2-foot Barrina LED grow lights I already had a number of. These are available on Amazon for about $60 for a box of 6. That's not a promotion, by the way, just information. My videos mostly receive less than 1,000 views, so I assure you no one is paying me to say anything. Unfortunately, the manufacturer keeps the specs for the lights a well-guarded secret, so I have no idea how many lumens or kelvins they put out. I think it's a safe assumption the Kelvin number is less than the 5,000 minimum typically recommended. These definitely aren't the best lights in the world, but I know from past experience they do their job and provide a good amount of coverage for the money. Assembly is pretty straightforward for the most part. It's just really a light bar that you see in the middle and 2 wings that act as reflectors. The reflectors each slide into a dovetail toward the back of the light. It takes a little muscle to get it in, and you have to be careful because the edges on those reflectors are sharp. I have gouged my hand open on a number of occasions, but there's really nothing to this part of it. The lights also come with a number of mounting hardware options. What I'm going to use are those strip of clips at the top that you snap onto the light, and then you can suspend by a chain or string. See here, I'm demonstrating how they pop on. Getting them on is easy. Taking them off will probably hurt your fingers a little bit. They don't like to come back off once they're on, but you can. And this is just how you would attach a length of chain to the hanger clip. Just pinch an S-hook in there and clamp everything closed with a pair of pliers. To hang the lights via chain from the shelving unit itself, I had to pinch these S-hooks onto the mesh that makes up each shelving layer. This was, of course, a very painstaking process, individually clamping each one onto the rack with a pair of pliers. But here is what the lights actually look like when they're set up and suspended, ready to go. They couple together each 2-foot section. The kit, in addition to the power cables you need, it has a coupler to connect the lights to daisy chain them that way. And here it is set up, or as set up as it's going to get until I put some seed starts on there. I didn't have enough lights to cover that bottom shelf area. So each layer that you see there, each, I guess, level is a better term for it, that's 12 lights. I had a total of 32 lights, so I wouldn't have enough to do complete coverage on the bottom. So what I decided to do was just set up one level of my old shelf with the 6 leftover lights that I had after setting up the primary shelf. I'm going to do this one for any overflow that I have for plants that don't really grow tall and don't need a ton of headspace. Cucumbers, herbs, stuff like that. I have a sample of my starting containers that I'm going to use for tomatoes under the lights, just to show that there is a little too much space when the chains are at their maximum length between what's going to be the top of the soil layer of the cup. What I'm going to do, I did decide to save a little money on chain. That actually starts to add up after everything else. I'm going to put risers under the starter trays to get them a little closer to the lights. With inexpensive lights like these, it's important to have them as close as possible to the plants without so close that the lights are going to burn them. One downside, I am not the best at wrangling cordage, so things are a little bit of a mess there. But it's better than it was. And of course, I'm going to incorporate a Christmas tree timer into the setup so that I don't have to remember to go in and out all the time to switch things on and off. All right, here is everything set and ready to go for the spring-summer seed starting season. Total cost of this whole unit, or my entire setup, wound up being a little under $500. And yeah, that's pricey, but A, it is less expensive than buying a full out-of-the-box grow light setup from, a seed starting company. Also, much of the pain was spread across the last 2-3 years. I bought a couple of boxes of the grow lights every year, so I didn't just shell out $500 last week for this. So that's really all I have on this project here. I appreciate anybody who's new, anybody who came back, and anybody who stuck around this far. And I'll be getting more videos out as we get out of the cold, dark gray of January and more toward the lovely spring that we get here in Sacramento that occurs between late February and early May. So thanks again.